Hey, so today's topic is on being an ABCD and how it relates to our identity and our family structure. So, Yashu, what's an ABCD?
What is an ABCD? An ABCD is an American born, confused, or confident Desi. Today,
Yeah.
after our conversation, we're really going to dive into figuring out who we are, what is our identity, but then that has a lot to do with how we're brought up in our family structures. So that's what today's episode is going to be about. And for everyone who is tapping in, my name is Yashu Rao. I'm a plus size model and confidence coach. And up here we've got
Hi, I'm Srishti Prabha. I'm the assistant editor at India Currents, which is a global South Asian diaspora magazine. So if you can, go ahead and go like at india.currents and follow us and follow Yashu, of course, if you don't follow her, which is at the Yashu Rao.
Yes, yes. I am so excited for today's topic because I think it is one of those topics which is super important to address, and it's one where our community, right, the ABCD community, very often struggles with when it comes to figuring out who exactly they are and what it's all about. How does it feel to like grow up in America yet be
Mm-hmm.
Indian? And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a struggle for some people. So my first question to you, Srishti, is: did you at any point in your life struggle with your identity where you're like, wait, but that's super Indian, but wait, I live in America, but then wait, I was like, I want to do the Indian thing, but wait, I can't, like, that kind of struggle. Have you ever faced that in your life?
Yeah, I think it's not unique to just being Indian, right? Like, it's like growing up as an immigrant in this country, you see, like, okay, there's expectations of what things should be like, and then things that are happening within your household or in your communities that are so, so different. So, yeah, I mean, girl, did it happen once? No, it happened my whole life. It's still happening. I'm like, what am I doing? Half the time. And it's even funnier because you see it like also when you travel to India, which we've talked about a little bit, where like here you're not Indian enough, or here you're too Indian, and then there you're not Indian enough, and it's like, or South Asian or whatever, South Asian diaspora you are, like that's what ends up happening. You're kind of never enough of anything, and so what does that really mean, you know?
Absolutely. And I feel like that was definitely a struggle that I had and have, where I feel so Indian or so Desi sometimes. And then I'm sitting there like, wait, but I'm so Desi. And then I'm never actually accepted by people who are maybe from India or like, born and raised over there. And they're just like, no, you're not. And I'm like, but wait, like, I feel like I am. And that does play a really huge part in figuring out who you are. I felt like, I think it took me like 25 years almost, like 25 years or 24 years, and then also for me to actually leave my Desi house to really sit down and take that shoebox, turn it over, dump everything out, and then try to just kind of like figure everything out, sort all my thoughts and who I am to really figure out, well, am I a confused Desi? Am I a confident Desi? Like, who am I? And I think, drum roll, I came to the conclusion that I am a confident Desi. I feel like I really resonate with my Desi culture and community, and a lot of that reflects, but it doesn't mean that I can't balance my American lifestyle. And as you guys know, I'm a model. Like, I do a lot of these non-Desi things, right? Like, I'm a model, I date outside my culture, all of these other things, but at the same time, at the core, when I've really done my like self-work and identification, I felt, listen, I'm very Indian. Like, literally today, like every day, I have my very Indian household things that I do, and at the core, I feel like that's who I am. So my question to you, Srishti, is: are you confused or are you confident?
Wow. I mean, I love that you came up with this question. You asked this question. I put it in my question poll thing on Instagram to see what my friends would say. I definitely got a lot of confused. A lot of people are confused. And I don't think there's a right answer. I don't think that it's like you're either confident or you're confused. I think it's just interesting to see where people are at. And I think there's times where I feel very confident. Like right now, maybe this time period might be a time period where I'm very confident in my Desi heritage and who I am. But there have been so many times in my life where I felt very confused because, and I, this is like a day-to-day thing. Sometimes I'm like even
Right.
still confused because you're just like, oh man, I think it's like small things like, I know one thing I can tell you, which I noticed was a difference between my roommate and I. So I like moved home because I felt so I felt like so disconnected from my family when I was in Boston. I was like, I don't see my parents that much. I live this very independent life, and I'm so disconnected from my family, and that's the only family I have in the U.S. So I moved back to California because I was like, I just feel this need to be here and near my parents. And not only that, my parents would definitely guilt me. So this is a very Indian part of this culture. Indian culture, the parents will guilt you into the things that they want to happen. So like my parents were guilting me for years, like, you're not near us, what if we die? I'm like, you can't keep bringing up your death. I'm gonna that's like, you talk about your death, ultimately I'll show up, right? Because it's like, now I have this like fear, and as much as I'm like joking around, like that fear that my parents were going to die and the amount of times they said it to me, I actually had it had a psychological impact where this is a little bit serious, but it took a toll on my mental health, where I had these visions of my parents dying, and I had to overcome that because I was like, I was paralyzed like by fear. And when I moved back home, I didn't do anything for like a year because I was so paralyzed by the fear of like maybe disappointing my parents or like leaving my parents, or like what would happen to my parents if I wasn't there. My parents are fine. I want to mention they have no illness. Like other people's parents might be in much worse situation. My parents are fine. They're healthy. They're great. Like they are not ill. So that guilt, like, that's a huge portion of Indian culture. And then, being near your parents and like taking them in once they're older, like that's another part. So like, I'm sure, Yashu, you're dating outside the culture, and so am I. Like in those scenarios, you have to be very like upfront. Like when my parents get older, like they're going to live with me because that's just what we've decided. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think those are very real. And it's so funny. I actually had this conversation with my mom right before I got on this live.
No way.
I was just, as you guys can see, and I'm going to share this with you guys. I have my family picture here. And there's my mom. And
Aww.
my sister. And today's my sister's birthday. So happy birthday, Akka.
Happy birthday, Akka. That's so cute.
And there's like my dad and, bubble bath. And so I just looked at the picture and I was like, I called my mom. I was like, I had just talked to her, but I just called her back with like a tear at like the tip of my eye. I was like, I really miss you guys. And then my mom's like with the emotional blackmail.
Yeah.
You never come home. When you come here, you just run. I'm like, Mom, we're not getting
It's COVID, Mom. Right. I can't be coming home.
I said, like, I miss you guys, but you have to understand, like, this is life. And I think for me, the reality of knowing that, like, in that picture, Nana, dad, is so young. And now, fast forward, Nana's not the same. He's older. He can't see properly, can't hear properly. Like, the realizations start to become...
Yeah.
And so for me, and especially, I kind of want to get into this topic with you as well, Srishti, which is the Desi family structures. We are very close-knit. In general, Desi family structures are built in a way to be connected. I know my mom is always saying things like this, and we've talked about this in the past, where my mom's like, you grow up in your house and then you leave this house when you get married. But because you know what, after you get married, you can't come back. And statements like that, which may not be true, right, to a certain degree, but you see like the Desi structure, like how close knit your family. My dad literally called me today like, hey, for Christmas, I'm planning to send you money. Tell me how to send you money. I'm like, nah, I'm earning. Like, you don't need to send me money. And he's like, no, I said I'm sending you money. I was like, okay. So it's just like, I feel like there's this closeness that a lot of other cultures don't see. And I think for my life, the place that really hit home was when I went through my mental health crisis with depression and suicide. And during that phase, which first of all, mental health is a taboo in the Indian community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that my parents, first of all, like they had no idea what was happening, but
Mm-hmm.
still went and they went out to seek medical help and advice, which is something
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of Indian families may not even be willing to do, but my family did that. And on top of that, like just the roller coaster ride it was to go through those 5 years of my life, the fact that my parents, like, we got even closer, like they became even more protected. Like they didn't just say, oh, you 18, get out of my house. They
Mm-hmm.
kept it so close that even till this day, they're like okay with my sister being independent. Oh yeah, your sister, she's a doctor, she'll figure it. But with me, even though I'm independent and a lot of times like I know how to live life more manageably than she does, my mom and
Mm-hmm.
dad are very protective. Like, I hope Yashu makes it through life. Like, I hope she's going to be okay in life. Like, I hope she's going to have money. I hope she's going to. It's just that protective thing that kind of came from a really low point in my family's life. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think family structure is super important. And that brings you closer to, like, we used to spend time watching movies and eating Indian food. And so that adds on to that culture. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, but in your opinion, like, how did you guys grow up? Like, do you think your parents were modern, or do you think your parents were very traditional in the way that they raised you, and they did they keep you like, oh, okay, like you my little thing, and I got to raise you like so perfect Indian? How did you feel?
I think growing up, maybe it was more like you have to be like the good kid and do all the right things. And I definitely subscribed to that on my own a little bit. Like I put a lot of pressure on myself and like in some ways I did subscribe to it. Like I cared about school and I wanted good grades and I didn't really question what my parents said in terms of like academics and stuff. But then when it came to I don't know, other things, I definitely felt like I rebelled a little bit. Like I didn't want to be the traditional Indian girl, which was like submissive and quiet and stuff like that. Like I don't think I ever checked that box. And I know in our previous live we talked a little bit about it, but like yeah, I definitely didn't like my parents had problems with their like community because I would start all these fights with guys and stuff. And so I think I will say my parents they were kind of both because I think they were changing as they lived here longer, but it was still slower than where we were at. So it was like they were attempting to be progressive maybe to some degree, but then weren't quite there yet. And then now when I got older, I could like talk, I could articulate what I was thinking better and like have those meaningful conversations in a better way. That was a little bit more, which was a little less antagonistic and a little more productive because when you're a teenager, you're just like, you can't tell me what to do. You're not the boss of me. I hate you guys. I want to go to my room. And so like now as an adult, you can have those conversations and like you have to remind them like I'm an adult and I'm telling you something, so you gotta listen. It's not just like I'm not 15 years old and I don't know about the world. And so yeah, I think that's like really good question because I do think some parents are a little more traditional, but like my parents, I would say specifically were they were both. I think they were just it was hard to let go of their culture and they were also trying to adapt to a new culture. So that brings us to what we are also kind of dealing with, right? Like who are we and how are we adapting and changing? And I can only imagine that it's harder once you're older. So I don't know.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree. And that what you just said, right? It gets harder as you get older. And I feel that a lot. I see that
Hmm.
now that I'm older, um, I'm getting clarity, right? Like, for example,
Hmm.
dating, which is a huge topic. We've talked about it all through the month of November. And for those of you guys who might be tapping in, be sure to go to India.Currents. You'll be able to go to the IGTV section. You'll be able to see all the different live topics and conversations that we had. So be sure to check those out. But coming
Hmm.
back to what we were talking about, that clarity in dating and seeing that for me, being a plus size Indian woman and finding that it was hard for me to date within the Indian community, let alone like the Telugu or Tamil
Hmm.
community. So for me, like going outside was really groundbreaking, right? In a sense.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like I have those conversations in my mind, like, okay, well, how do I balance the Indianness in me? Like my comfort is, you know, sitting eating dal chawal and like watching an old movie. Like that's what I see for myself as like my
Yep.
to go relaxation. And so how do you combat like not combat, but rather how do you work with a partner who might be outside of that? So I think that those are all part of that identification process. Like, what is your process? Respecting that process.
Mm-hmm.
And that being said, for all of the people who maybe you are still dating within your culture or you don't know, I know after our live segment last week, I actually had people who requested to get on a Zoom call to talk about dating. Just based off of our previous episode about Indian matchmaking and everything, and we really
Mm-hmm.
broke
Mm-hmm.
down about dating and everything. And Happy Yashu is planning to present an amazing educational program for the youth ABCDs about dating and sex and everything. So be sure to stay tapped in for 2021 with Happy Yashu, just based off of the feedback that I got from everyone. But
Yeah,
again,
I think like you said, your identity plays such a huge role in like every facet of your life. So when we're talking about being an ABCD, it's like there's so many levels to that, and I think we're just scratching the surface and beginning to talk about it. Like I think we've talked about it in terms of dating, and now we're talking about it kind of in terms of being in a family. And I think like it was really cool that you brought up the topic of mental health, because that is a huge thing in my life and in my family as well, where like I've also dealt with a lot of mental health issues and you know and suicide. And I think like those topics are very difficult for Indian parents to understand, and it does kind of, it's hard to touch, and then it becomes some sort of a stigma. Like my mom, if I ever tell her I'm not doing well, it's like, no, you're fine, you're gonna be fine. Like, why do you keep
right,
saying you're not well? And I'm like, because I'm telling you the truth. You don't want to hear
right.
it, you know. And I'm telling you. So I think like there's so much we can talk about, and I think the next time we bring up this topic, it'll be so like we'll have to go really deep and dive into one of them. But talking about family structures in general, I think like the cultural aspect plays a role in like how we even interact with other people when we're young, because we were taught what our parents did, and then we do that.
Right.
And or like our parents, I remember bringing Indian food to school and people not like making fun of that,
Right.
like small things like that, where like your culture plays a huge role. And I think like it's so easy for people to say like, why are like a lot of people say Americans specifically are so fixated on identity and like race and race politics and things like that. It matters here because it's just how people engage with other people. I think if that wasn't the precedent, then of course that wouldn't be something we talked about so much.
Right.
But our identities matter so much, and this place has so many different, cultures, and it's multicultural and it's diverse. So it's something that we should bring up, right?
Absolutely.
What do you feel? Yeah.
I definitely agree. I definitely agree. And for those of you guys, again, make sure you subscribe and follow India.Currents. There will be an article releasing soon, a column about this very topic about Indian family structures and this comparison that you're making, right? Like bringing the fact that you're in America and you're in the presence of other cultures without you even trying, you're going to be comparing, especially growing up. So for those of
Mm-hmm.
you guys who are watching and tapping in, how many of you guys have been like, well, why does that kid get to do it but I don't? Like, how many of you have felt that way or shared that emotion or asked that question to your parents? And that's what the article talks about. The column talks about it. So be sure to check it out in the weeks coming. But, why is it that, why are can I have a sleepover? And I remember my parents were like, no sleepovers. That was not what they grew up with. In fact, the picture that I showed earlier with my dad, this one, right, where we're
Mm-hmm.
doing a bubble bath. And for some reason, like my mom was just very against this concept of bubble baths and like sitting in a bathtub and bathing and everything, because she's just used to the Indian way of bathing your kid. You use a mug and a bucket and you just eat it. I think it was like me and my sister as kids, like we saw someone else doing it, or we saw it on a TV show, and we really were like sad. And I think that's when my dad was like, okay, well, I can supervise, so I'll sit in here too. Then it should be okay, like it was just this, like very Desi thought process, like as long as I'm dead, it's good.
It should be fine. Yeah, right. And that's like such a good point. Like we're actually coming into the holiday season. This is a very interesting thing because like most Indian people kind of celebrate Christmas and whatever that means, celebrate Christmas. But like I remember as a kid, like all my friends had Christmas trees. I would see it through the window and I'd be like, oh, I want a Christmas tree. And my mom tells this story to me every single year. Every single year she'll say, you looked out the window, you saw someone else's Christmas tree, and you said to me, I want a Christmas tree. My daddy, so my dad's mom, she was living with us at that time, and she said, no, we're Hindu. Why would we have a Christmas tree? Like, it doesn't make sense. She banned it. She was like, you cannot. And then my grandma left, and I did it again. I was like, oh, I really want a Christmas tree. I was probably like 5 or 6. And then my mom was like, well, you know what? I was like, we live here, and that's what you want, and you're a kid, so we're going to get you a Christmas tree. And we still have that same Christmas tree to this day. And I just put it up the other weekend, and my mom told the story again. I'm like, how many times are you going to tell the same story? But, it's nice to hear, because I'm like, you know what? I started a tradition in my family for about, like for Christmas, even though we don't celebrate Christmas. But I think the idea of like being part of this culture and partaking in something was kind of something that I started because I was like the kid that, was seeing all the things, and my parents were like, I don't know, like, why do we want to do that thing, It's just like a bubble bath.
I think that's great. Like, thank you for sharing that. I think that's so true. How many of you guys who are tapping in right now have been through an experience like that where like an American holiday becomes this like Desi party or something? Like it's like a Desi version of it. I know during Thanksgiving someone was like, oh, do you celebrate Thanksgiving? I said, well, technically, no, I don't celebrate Thanksgiving, but we take the opportunity of an off day to bring in the Indian food, the biryani.
Oh, we always want to eat. Yeah, I had some biryani at my table. We had murg masalam, which is like some Indian-styled stuffed turkey. It's chicken, but it was like stuffed. And I was like, dude, my mom was like, I'm not giving up my traditions for Thanksgiving, which is great. I'm glad, because Thanksgiving, by the way, is a bad holiday anyway. So I'm glad that we're doing this holiday in our own way and appropriating it and turning it into something totally different, which is Indian.
Right, absolutely. So I think coming to that question, are you confident or confused, Desi? I think we are both. We are both, and it is okay to be sometimes confused and sometimes very confident. At the end of the day, and this is for all of you guys who are tapping in, who ask yourself this question constantly, who have fights with your parents because you're just torn between choices, and for all of those people who feel left out because they're either too Indian or too not Indian or don't fit into either community, listen. It is okay because there's so many people just like you, and we are all partly confused and partly confident. And it's you creating your own blend of your own identity and owning up to that. So for me, as an example, moving forward, I definitely want to celebrate Christmas with an actual Christmas tree because we don't got one in my house. We have this little, it's like literally like a table lamp thing.
Like a very small one, yeah.
Right. Yeah, so for me, I want to have a Christmas tree. I want to do presents, and I want to be able to call people over and do all of that. For this past Thanksgiving, it was not at my house, right, in DC. So here, we all decided to make our own Indian-inspired takes on traditional Thanksgiving meals. So with like cranberry chutney, my brother, like instead of mashed potatoes, they made like aloo.
It's like pav bhaji type of situation.
Aloo bhaji and like puri, and like we all did something different. And so what is it that you want to do? That's our question. How do you want to bring together the best of the two worlds? How do you bring in this country of opportunity that your parents chose to come here and have their family here? How do you take that? And then again, respecting the culture that you're from and taking bringing it into a space, a ball of perfection. What do you,
Well,
what?
I don't even think it has to be just in the US. It's like a global thing. My friend Surbi's on, I know she lives in Singapore. So I'm gonna give her a shout out because I'm sure she's having to, you know, learn completely different culture in Singapore. And she wrote this really nice article about Diwali and celebrating Diwali in Singapore where I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of Indians that are celebrating Diwali, but it's in a different place and you have to like find different ways of celebrating. Even like for our parents, celebrating those things here is very difficult because you have to find all these things. But then it's much easier to like appropriate a culture and, you know, make it your own. So, and
Right.
I think your friend Katie said like she's making Salvadorian food on Thanksgiving. So like I think this is the next level of a question, but like to, you know, we've talked about appropriation a little bit, and again, to what degree is appropriation appropriate and okay? And I think in this scenario, I personally advocate for appropriating Christmas because we don't get our own holidays. We don't get Diwali here. We don't get Holi here. We don't get, you know, Makar Sankranti and all the other ones that are celebrated. We get what we get, and so why not make the most of it, you know, and bring our own traditions into those scenarios.
Absolutely.
Um,
And I think what's also important to mention here as well is that for those of you who are mixed, right, like we are mixed in this like cultural pot, what is it that you can do to seek happiness within, or be thankful for your heritage but also lead an American lifestyle? Or what is it? And I was actually talking to my friend Katia, who is on here yesterday, and I was telling her how I think the best thing that I can always do as an Indian woman, a woman of Desi heritage, is to share my heritage with people. You're a
mhm.
classical Indian dancer, I'm a classical Indian dancer, and so we share that, taking that, coming up with choreographies, spreading our culture in creative ways. I also, proposing how we can educating ourselves, like learning about our heritage. Learn,
Mhm.
like for me, as you know, like I read a lot of Hindu mythologies and stuff like that. I grew up with a very scholarly family, so for me, that's a huge part of my identity. But for me to take
Mhm.
that and then have intellectual conversations with people within the Indian community and outside, and have that
Yeah.
exchange, that positive exchange, like, oh, the Ganga River, let me tell you about the Ganga River, here's a mythological story about that, like where I have been educated enough to be able to now spread the beauty to the world. So I think that is something that you can do, especially if you're in that mixed part and you don't know what to do, and you really want to be thankful for your community, but you're also kind of like, what? I feel like expressing that, sharing what you know, is always going to make your heart feel warm. Any thoughts?
I totally agree, and it's so I never disagree with you. So whenever I say agree, I'm like you already know I agree. But I'm just thinking like on a broad scale, like when we're kind of similar age groups, so growing up for us was so different than the kids that are growing up now. So these messages that we're putting out, it's like kind of generic, but I'm thinking like for us, it was so different because being Indian was not something that was represented in media. It was not something we saw everywhere. It was not something you saw on TikTok and Instagram and all these other spaces that now you get to see people being Indian globally. But like also a lot of them are not in India anymore. Like the people that we're seeing on Instagram are people that are being Indian very vocally, here in Europe, anywhere, and so it's so different. Like, what does identity mean and what does culture mean? I think is another, it's like we have so much to unpack because, what you're seeing doesn't always have to mean that that's how you go about doing something. So like
Right.
when we didn't have, when growing up, like really a standard of what it was expected, but we saw what our communities were doing. And that doesn't necessarily mean that's right either, right? Like, so it's like we're taking things that we like Serbi said, like we're taking the essence of things that we like and values and parts of our culture and then creating what we think is the right balance of the American and Indian part of us. But I don't want you to feel confused. I don't want you to feel for the new age kids who have access to a lot of information. I don't want you to feel burdened by the fact that you have to act like something that you see. You are allowed to forge your own path and don't let anyone question your identity. Don't let anybody tell you that you're not Indian enough or not South Asian enough or whatever. No one can take your identity or your culture away from you because you're deciding how to use it. You're deciding what it is that you want from it, and don't shy away from it. I think actually it's funny because growing up a lot of people shied away from being Indian, and I'm happy that we're in this new age culture where people are embracing it a lot more and talking about it a lot more. But I also I think you brought this up, Yashu, and I really, really like that you said this last time, or maybe the time before, but you're like, just because I see Indian girls twerking on Instagram doesn't necessarily mean I have to twerk on Instagram. And that's the truth. That's also fine if you want to twerk on Instagram. It's also fine if you don't want to twerk on Instagram. I know you have thoughts on this. Yeah.
It's so funny. It's like we're telepathically communicating, because I was literally in my head thinking about, is this TikTok video of these girls who are like Desi girls who were saying, how is it okay for Desi girls in movies to dress like this?
I saw this. Yeah, I saw this.
And they can't do this, and it's like they're going all out with the twerking, right?
Yeah.
And for a minute, I cringed. Right? For a minute, I cringed because I was just like, what is the point that you're trying to make here? Like, I don't understand the point that you're trying to make. Are you saying that you get shade? Because I'm pretty sure even the people in the movies get shade too. Like, if you really think about it.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really sure what the point that they were trying to do is. But at the same time, I'm also kind of like, let me come down to this generation, like where this generation is highly impacted by what they're seeing on social media and how important it is to express yourself sexually and sensually and be proactive in the way that you're moving your body and whatever, and have certain beauty standards and stuff, which are, again, very social media driven. Like, I feel like the TikTok culture has definitely made an impact, right, on the way that ABCD kids are living.
Yeah.
I look at my niece.
I was thinking of that exact video as well, and I just want to go back because I really am thinking about that video. And I did not cringe as much because, I don't know, I live in the Bay Area. Everyone's kind of ratchet and twerking everywhere. So I'm like, yeah, okay. But I think your point was the right one, which is like, what message is this trying to send? Because it's not like it's ever condoned. Even in those, it's like that's the item piece, right? That's the side chick that you're not supposed to be or whatever. So, I mean, I don't think anyone is saying that you shouldn't twerk. I think we're just saying that the messaging should be have actual impact and a point. But maybe that's the point. Maybe that's not the point of TikTok. I feel old saying that. I maybe don't understand TikTok because I do watch TikTok videos on Instagram, but I don't fully get the culture. And so I can see though. Yeah, go ahead.
I think what that video was showing was in a conservative community such as the Indian community, don't feel like you can't twerk if that's what you want to do. I feel like somehow that was the message that was trying to be trying to be communicated, or don't feel or kind of just saying trying to normalize.
Well, I think it was normalizing it. Yeah, I think it was normalizing it and saying you should do what you want. At the same time, why would you be twerking in front of your aunties anyway? I don't know. When is there a situation where there are things which you just wouldn't do in front of I wouldn't twerk in front of my parents. Right. That's just a thing I wouldn't do.
Shouted out saying these girls just really want to twerk and put it out there. That's what I felt. Seeing that, it was just they just really wanted to twerk. They needed to get the twerk out. So they're like, okay, let me do it this way, where it'll be kind of I'm throwing shade on my culture, so it'll be totally cool. So
I think maybe it was also don't call them sluts and hoes and whores or whatever people in any communities do maybe say about people doing those things. But I think the message should really be don't fixate on what other people are saying, do what you want to do, instead of because no matter what, people are going to think what they want to when you put it on TikTok, it's not like an Indian auntie's watching that and being wow, that's a really good point. Nobody, no, they're not. So this is interesting because I think we've just hit like maybe the point where we're maybe slightly too old
Well,
to like,
I don't think I'm too old,
but
but
we're talking about social media like we know. And I'm like, maybe I don't know. Maybe I am not the person that knows everything there is to know, right? Like maybe we're wrong, we're off base.
I think I think it's like a level of maturity because young people are on social media. So the way like for me, like the way I used to use social media when I was younger to now,
Yeah.
like I'm using social media. So I think it's just like the way people are using social media. But I think that like to the people who do tap in, who might be younger generation, who see content like that, and then they feel some sort of way about it, especially those people who are confused. So
Mm-hmm.
whole thing, right? Like for example, my brand, who I am, my whole thing, like have you ever seen an Indian plus sign woman going nude, doing an entire nude campaign? No, but I did that.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that because my whole statement there was, first of all, a brown girl doing it and getting that shame or whatever for it might be a resultant of the culture, but the mission and the statement was much more broader, right? So I think even sex, like I'm planning to offer a Desi sex class. And the reason is because I'm trying to normalize the conversations that you can be having about these topics without them feeling like, oh my God, without you feeling like I'm Indian, like have I just committed sin? Do I need to go bathe myself in Ganga River? No, like these are normal things, but it's about the way that you're translating that information and you're communicating that. And so when it comes to people who see videos like the twerking video, again, I ain't throwing shade on your video. Girl, you do your thing, okay? I saw you do that. You did a great. Like, do your thing. But
yeah, they were amazing. I just think the message needs to be the right message, and the message should be don't give a fuck about what other people think, do what you want to do. And again, I want to wrap it up with just thinking culture and identity. We are not the only people that have a point of view on this. So like what we're saying is our point of view. We might resonate with some people, we might not resonate with others. But I think to keep in mind that like you have to, you being you and living your life the way that you do, like Yashu does, like doing her nude shoots, doing what she wants to do, modeling, like that is the message. The message is that you are doing what you want to do, and people will see that. And I think as you get older, you start to know that about yourself, and maybe that's the confused versus confident portion of what we've been talking about. Where yeah, you on the same wavelength with me, right? Like you get to a point where you're like, okay, like I think even when I don't know what I'm doing is right, at least I know that I know myself enough to trust myself and put out what I need to put out into the world. And I think that we're at that point because we're in like close to our 30s and kind of just getting a better handle on our identities. But that said, if you make mistakes in the past or you feel like I did something that's regrettable, don't regret it. Like it's fine. You're just going to grow and become better, right? I'm sure you feel that, Yashu, yeah.
All the freaking time. But
yeah.
I say that to say though that no matter what, and that concept of like maturity and growing and evolving into another person, like it's all a process. And for us, like you said, the age definitely plays a role in like looking back. Like I said, I was talking to Katya the other day and she's like, Yashu, the person you used to be and who you are now are so different. And I think it's because life lessons. But with that being said, coming back to family structures and culture, because I really think it's such a big role. And again, for those of you guys, be sure to go to India Currents. The new article is going to be dropping soon. And I'm really diving in that article talking about how the Desi route is kind of this like safe route. Like your parents are guaranteeing if you go down the route I tell you, you are going to have a kind of happy life. Like you're going to have income to support yourself. You're going to have, kids, a wife, a family. Like you're going to have these certain things. What you're also not going to have freedom of expression and exploration in a sense. So it's kind of like a catch-22. Like if you want this security, you can't have that. And if you want to have that, you can't have this.
Well, but like, can I
But in
But
the
then, yeah, that may not be true. I think it's like
right,
what we've said this a few times. It's like if that is what you want to do, then it might just be the perfect path, right? But
right.
if it's not what you want to do, then you're missing out on all these things that you wanted to try, and then what is the
That
point?
community
So,
is sometimes so hard with the Desi family
hmm
structure where you're like, Mom,
hmm
I want to just be a teacher. I don't want to be an engineer. Where it's like, what? So you're gonna how are you gonna survive on like that money, huh? You eat this, you drink that, you drink Starbucks every day. Like how do you think you're gonna and
that is the most real thing you've said. How are you going to support that lifestyle? You
right.
like you want all these things.
And like a lot of times we like feel
Yeah,
and we just go this Desi route. And then later
yeah.
in life, you're just kind of like, oh, okay, well, that was not so bad. I remember, like, my parents scared the crap out of me, still do, about having a credit card to the point, like, oh my God, one day I had a panic, like, I had an anxiety attack because I was like, I have to pay this money or then it's triple. Like, oh my God, I'm going to be in like, I have to owe the bank $1 million in the next 10 years? Like, what? And then I called the bank, like, is there anything I can do? Like, is there like a COVID special or something? And the guy was like, ma'am, that's not how interest works. And I was like, what? And then the guy like tells me what interest is and like breaks it. I'm just like, my parents, like, wait,
They tricked you, man. They duped you.
but I also am thinking like, was it really them duping or was it my dad who is an immigrant who came to this country, didn't know anything, who just was always just on the safer side? I remember like a couple of years ago, he doesn't even do like taxes by trusting someone else. He calculates it
He
on
does his own.
and he's
Yeah.
and he made a mistake of like I think it was like $10. And he paid extra. He paid extra to the government, $10. He goes to the IRS building and he's crying. My dad started crying like, I'm so sorry. Like I really didn't mean to. Like I was supposed to not be $10 extra, and I didn't. I'm just like, no, it's okay.
You
Like
paid them. They don't care.
like you do not have to freak out. But then this fear, like I just did something wrong. I did something illegal to the government. No, you like it's okay. Like people. If you look at the world, like there are people who don't even pay taxes. Wink, wink. So it's like, it's like literally in the grand.
Yeah.
It's that.
So it's like the stuff, it's the stuff that we learn from our parents that like stay with us, and then we like perpetuate the things that we learn from them, and then it's only until we like do something where we miss the mark and then are told like, hey, yeah, someone totally, you did not know. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like
exactly.
My sister got, and this is the difference between me and my sister, right? Like I'm kind of that rebellious bad Indian girl, and my sister's the safe Indian girl. So she like listens to everything my parents said. She's a doctor, she did exactly what they said. Like, she doesn't have a credit card, and she's older than me. She doesn't even have a credit card, and I'm here like flexing my card everywhere. Like a bad Indian girl, right?
A baddie over here, baddie. Not a bad Indian girl, you a patty. You do what you want. But okay, we gotta wrap it up. It's been 45 minutes, and I think we had a good conversation. I think we'll delve more into this because we've just touched so many things like mental health, like family structure, credit card debt. Girl, I think maybe I need to talk to you about credit cards. I'm just kidding. You seem fine. But yeah, like what our parents learned behaviors, things like that. So thank you, Yashu. Thank you so much for facilitating this conversation with me. And I appreciate your energy every single week. Please like India.Currents if you've watched this video, and also like and follow the Yashu Rao. Yashu, any last thoughts?
Listen, you do you. All of y'all listening, you do you. Identify who you are by taking everything, dumping it out, and retrying to focus your life. I think entering into 2021, identifying your identity is one of the most important things you can do. That's definitely something that I'm working on. And I encourage that for everybody, especially as we enter into the new year. So with that being said, I appreciate each and every single one of you guys. Be sure to check out all of our different conversations at India.Currents and stay tapped in. Click on the little alarm button at the top of your IDs so you can get the notifications when we go live, and be sure to check out all the different columns and articles and interesting information. And again, Hashtag Yashu for Indian matchmaking. That ain't over.
Oh, it ain't over. And
Over.
I want to mention this may be our last video of the year. So